A brief philosophical lecture, and it's on the pick today of existential angst and existential euphoria across the modal realist omniverse. It's going to be the perennial discussion topic. So, existential angst and existential rapture, while they might seem, diametrical or dialectical opposites at first, kind of the notion of what it means to feel too idealistically, like to basically see the entire Platonic realm laid out before you in perfect simulation. You don't need fed breadcrumbs in some kind of pragmatic contractualism situation is when your expectations are greatly compromised. I find is often the root of a kind of an existential version of angst in general. And angst is emotion that's heavily discussed by thinkers like Kierkegaard and Sartre and Emile Cioran and even like Edith Stein, the great sociological philosopher. So I think that now in a modal realist universe, according to the Lewisian tradition, it's presumed that, every possible, I suppose, non-ultra-finitary odds of something happening combinatorically is when it's maximalized, because modal realism tends to presume ontological or metaphysical maximalism. It therefore becomes a question of metaethically of how much should a exclusively modal realist universe instantiate and inhabit in terms of all the abstract objects that it has as properties. And I think that the notion of what it means to be absolutely free in an existentially bankrupt or immoral anti-realist Machiavellian universe is particularly, it's a particularly riveting kind of experience to see ontological rebellion even in objectively nihilistic conditions. And this is very much echoed not merely in Deleuze's Anti-Oedipus, but this is also echoed in just the rebellious struggle of the person who kind of is outside the citadel, institutional kind of structure. So I want to continue that. What does it mean to express existential angst and existential rapture across every possible world? Well, to me, it means precisely not just merely mathematical reducing all possible mental objects to geometry, but also the lived kind of embodied Merleau-Ponty experience that's embedded within all our psyches and our, even the predetermined psyches we might have. Now, can predetermined consciousness truly exist in our quantum randomistic universe? Well, I don't know that question for sure, but it'll take your Riemannian or your non-Riemannian, Einsteinian or your non-Einsteinian basically frames of relativity to anchor yourself on. So I think that this notion kind of opens itself to the talk that what does it mean to even experience the catharsis, the existential angst, and kind of an ultimate, profound, Ouroboros mentality. So I think that the cure for existential angst to become it's the person that you're most pragmatically creatively maximize or intellectually maximize self. You make it regardless of whether your ultimate dreams come true. You can always maximize your intellectual and creative identity and therefore not only profit in a knowledge capital sense, but expend your own moral worth over a possible world simply by contributing to knowledge network that has the potentiality to affect many people, even if you never meet them. And I think this notion of what it means to be a surrealist in particular and in a say mechanical deterministic universe is very profound, because I think surrealism in itself is kind of like an epiphenomenal and an emanatic art of language that's kind of wriggled free of its clothes, I suppose to speak, and now it's completely manifested and sprawled out on the linguistic oases, the linguistic badlands of the Omniverse. It's almost like being a Western novelist of the Omniverse. I would compare, radical visionary surrealist poetry to. And now how that relates to existentiality is that existentialism is based implicitly and not so implicitly on the ontological commitment to radical visionary creativity and imagination. So existential angst, while it might have a cure by directly acknowledging the idealism, eigenvalues hidden in one's experience, that they're kind of conformatively not wanting to engage with at all, that there's always kind of a hedonistic outcome in many, even objectively dollaristic or pessimistic situations. It just kind of is a matter of how much you're willing to idealism treadmill, which is my term for how much idealism somebody kind of accumulates on a regular basis throughout time and intervals, just as hedons are. And I think that idealism, and I don't mean just hippie, flowery kind of bothsome kind of idealism. I mean the idealism that anchors yourself to ultimate futures, to ultimate acts of creativity, to ultimate acts of responsible power, in the sense of how you manifest your prodigious gifts. It's all kind of the executive time management of a highly idealistic and gifted person. So therefore, I think that what it means to be existentially angst or existentially rapture. Now, angst and rapture often coexist, because in an angst, we must see potential solution to even want to know, to even have this expectation in the first place. When it's not entirely met, say in some possible world, then we lose the hope, we lose the faith, in Sartrean terms, good faith. So, whether existential angst is expressed, or existential happiness or rapture expressed very similar in ever possible universes, parallel universes to ours, is a bit of a difficult, undeterminate question. We don't know, however, non-pantheistic beings interpret the eigenvalues associated not only with idealism and nominalism, but also just existentiality in general. Like, that's a very good topic, is cosmopsychic existentiality, panpsychic existentiality that's beyond the anthropic principle. So I think that in this conclusion, I just want to argue that one can simply write a Kierkegaardian, epic, simply based on that premise, which is, what does it mean to be existentially angst in a Lewisian modal realist universe? Now, existential angst and all the spatial temporality and the motivist kind of eigenvalues that correspond to the structure of the emotion. Now, you shuffle them, you shuffle the combinatorics of your emotion. Well, how does your existential angst even persist when it's in radically different, quantum swampland or non-Riemannian geometry or non-Euclidean geometry? Like, how does existential angst even exist in radically different geometric possible worlds that are nonetheless still philosophical? So I think one might use a quantum computer with infinitary contrapositive pair consistent logic to determine this. And also I want to say that existential angst might not have a universal definition, just as a meaning of life might not always, in terms of what meaning is even capable of maximizing about all the totalities of human qualia. So thank you so much for this brief lecture. The conclusion is that it depends on the modal theory system used, and it depends on the metasemantics of the modal realism as to how the mereological aggregates that constitute the epiphenomenality of your existential angst even come together. It really is a mereological gunk equation in each individual chessboard or shrubboard-like level. So thank you so much, and I hope this left you with a few bittersweet opinions into the macrocosmic and microcosmic teardrops of omnipresently and omnibenevolently existentially gasketing an angstful society. Thank you.